I'm Kylyn and I'm a sophomore. I was pretty fortunate to have a really good home life. I'm really connected with my mom and my dad, even though they are divorced and they got divorced when I was young. And so I'm pretty close to my family, so that's good. I've gone to church ever since I was a baby, and my mom went to the same church ever since she was a baby. I confirmed my faith in 8th grade, and that was like a big step in my faith for me. In 8th grade, this is when I think this was my first encounter, like true encounter with the Holy Spirit. 8th grade was a really rough year for me. I was going through a lot at the time. My stepmom at the time just divorced my dad, and she didn't even say goodbye to any of us, and that was a really tough time for my family. And it was also tough because I didn't get to heal as much as other people, and I didn't know where to go to for advice because I also had trouble with friends at that point in time. And so I looked to prayer, and I was just constantly praying for things to get better and certain things to happen. And then the Lord spoke to me in a dream and told me to look up Nahum 1:7, which reads, "The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble. He knows those who take refuge in him." And that verse has stuck with me ever since. It's that the Lord knows you and you take refuge in him and look to him for your struggles, and that he wants to build a relationship with you. And that's something that I've always held dear in my heart because I know that he knows me. Earlier this year, back in October, the night of October 30th, at around 8 o'clock, I started getting these awful stomach pains to where I didn't know what was happening. I thought it was just a bad stomach ache. I'm like, okay, I'll just try to sleep it off, it'll be better. About 2 or 3 a.m. I went to my mom's room and I was my stomach feels like it's twisting in knots, it won't stop. Took medicine, tried to go back to sleep, didn't get any sleep that night. Came to school the next day, October 31st, wanted to come because it was costume day, of course. And I was there and I was in so much pain. I remember talking to my friend being like, wow, my stomach has never felt like this. I've never felt this much pain. And she's like, you should go to the hospital. So I was texting my mom. She texted my grandma, who's a nurse. I was sent to urgent care halfway through the day. And then when I got there, they didn't know what was wrong with me. So they rushed me to an emergency room. And when I was there, they ran all these different types of tests, like an ultrasound, blood test. I think 6 different tests were taken. And they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I took all these different medicines, nothing was helping. In my stomach, it was just these constant pains, and I've never been in more pain in my life. And I know that night I talked to one of my friends on the phone, and I just prayed with her because I didn't know what was gonna happen to me because I just never felt like that before. Throughout that, it just kept getting worse, and the doctor had told me that if it gets worse, it can become fatal because they didn't know what was happening to me, and my body was just kind of failing out of nowhere. And so I was just praying with my mom, and I remember it was November 2nd. I came to my mom crying, thinking that I was going to die at this point because I had just never been in that much pain in my entire life. And I'd like to think I have a pretty high pain tolerance. And so when this was happening to me, I was just so confused and I didn't know what was happening. Doctors didn't know, they'd never seen something like this before. There seemed to be no hope with any of the medicines. And I was crying to her thinking that I was gonna die, and she was bawling with me because obviously you don't wanna think about that with your children. And so there was no hope at that point in my life. Then I remember the next night, I went to bed, and then around 11:30, midnight, my Bible was sitting on my bed because I was reading it that morning. And I picked it up and dropped it, and it opened to Jeremiah 30:17. And that verse says, "For I will restore your health back to you, and your wounds I will heal, declares the Lord." And I fell to the ground crying because I thought that was so amazing. And I was sitting there bawling my eyes out, and I felt a hand on my shoulder and heard a voice calling my name saying, "Kylyn, everything is going to be okay." And everyone in my house was asleep at this point. It was 11:30 midnight on a school work night. So it was God talking to me. The next day I woke up and absolutely nothing was wrong. I was completely healed and nothing's been wrong since. It's definitely helped having that type of a story because before that moment, I never thought that my testimony was anything special, which is never true. People's testimonies, they're all unique to their discovery of their faith. But I never thought that mine was anything special when reaching out and evangelizing to others. A lot of people see or believe by seeing. Me telling them that story and telling them how prayer works and God works in each and every one of us in different ways, I think has helped a lot with my confidence in talking to other people about that type of thing. And I've seen him work in me in that way. The reason for the hope that I have is that God obviously wanted to keep me alive both of those times. Not that I was considering doing anything the first time, but it was a really rough point in my life, and he's like, you can do this, you can get through this, look to me. And then the second time when I really thought I was going to die, and he kept me alive in that moment. And so obviously he's saying that he's not finished with me yet. And so I think that's given me a lot of hope for the future and what he wants and what his plans are for me. Things will get better. I know it sounds cheesy, but they will, and God has a plan for each and every one of us. I know that the journey can be really, really hard, but the final destination is worth it. I'm meant for more because I know that God works through me to spread his light to other people, and I think that makes me meant for more than what I believe that I am worth. Because he made me perfect in his image, not my own.